You're listening to the AI Native Dev, brought to you by Tesla.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast again. On this episode, this is a very quick follow-up after our previous chat, Felipe, where we talked a lot about how Felipe created applications and services, etc., with using Claude 3.5, and in particular, the projects functionality that effectively allowed you to create prompts, to create specifications, and so forth. For those of you who haven't listened to that first episode, first of all, feel free to do that, or you're more than welcome to carry on watching. But Felipe, you're a data scientist, you're a programmer, you're a PhD, you're well into kind of like your education, learning, teachings. Yeah, really interested in AI generation of code and the future of that AI has to play in software development. And today you're going to be showing us a screen share of your interactions with Claude 3.1. Just for the listeners, this is an episode which is only on YouTube, obviously, because we're going to be doing a ton of screen sharing. So you won't find us on the podcast, but the first episode of the chat is on both of those. I'm going to add the screen share to the page now. Felipe, talk us through, first of all, after you decided to use Claude 3.5, after you decided to use the projects, and this is what you were faced with. Talk us through the various aspects of the UI on the page and how you went about creating, in this case, Cards Against AI, which is an application that you wrote effectively as a test drive for Claude projects.
Yeah, just for those who didn't listen to the first podcast, like a quick introduction on the purpose of this. This is a control experiment that I did, and I really wanted to test the raw power of Claude 3.5. I could have done this with a VS Code extension, Cursor, or any of those different tools, but I really wanted to test the raw power of Claude. I really felt that the future is product spec centric versus code centric, and I was really forcing myself to apply that. And I decided to do Cards Against AI because it's something that I started from scratch, that I didn't have much clarity over what I wanted. And I wanted also to see how Claude can help me write the specifications of this product.
And that's the key piece, right? Because a lot of people go to a GPT and think straight away about the code. Give me some code that does this.
Yeah.
Whereas you went with the route of give me a specification from these prompts and from our discussion, with which I can then go ahead and create an application. So exactly. it was a slightly longer term path, really, because once you have the specification, it's there, it's more concrete, and that's your source of truth. When you ask for code from a GPT, what's your source of truth? You can't just keep your prompts unless it's one prompt, and then that one prompt is presumably more like a specification anyway. So talk us through this page.
Sure. So I have a project that is called Cards Against AI. There are some instructions that you can add. So in this case, I just put this instruction: you're CTO of a creative agency, blah, blah, blah. When brainstorming ideas about design, be brief, technology agnostic. Ask as many clarifying questions as possible before making up your mind. This is very important.
Turns it more into a chat kind of conversation.
And it really helps with the blank page problem. And what we were discussing in the previous podcast about that we can be lazy and expect that one single sentence can produce what we want. This protects us from that because one single sentence is not clear enough. So Claude will ask you questions. This one is also quite nice. Memory diagrams, tech stack, infrastructure details. It's nice when you instruct Claude how do you want Claude to interact and what do you want Claude to provide to you. And Memory diagrams are quite useful because they can be rendered on the artifacts. We will see that. Then I just outlined the preferred tech stack and some design principles. But I think that's a personal taste. It doesn't matter that much.
And this is like your system prompt?
That's your system exactly. Prompt? Yeah. These instructions are common to every chat.
Okay? Every chat in this entire...
So now I have all of the chats that I used to create this app. So as you can imagine, as you can see, like there's a lot of them. I did a lot of different chats on that. And you have this interface where you can add content. So I just add content and I can add any text file that I want. So
that's not just text files that Claude creates here, although if you do create a file, you can push it into there. But you could pull in whatever files you want as well. Okay.
But I also can, the artifacts that it creates, I can just ask it to integrate them into the project structure. But just to give you a better view over that, this is what we're talking about. Like this folder. this folder has all of the specifications that I want.
So how did you pull it out of Claude then to get that into VS Code?
Let's take a look into that.
Yeah, okay.
So let's see, for example, the OpenAPI specifications to answer that question. So here I say, okay, the definition of role. We were talking about roles in the previous podcast. You're a senior backend developer with extensive experience in API design, blah, blah, blah. Please review backend specifications, front-end specifications, and set up DB. That's all you need to design the API, which is the glue point, and propose OpenAPI specifications. So ask clarifying questions, and it asks a lot of questions. I answer back all of those questions, and then I get these. Okay? So this is the power of artifacts that I can actually review here. And if I modify it, then this same file will be modified. And then I just copy-paste this into OpenAPI, and that's it.
So a couple of the questions there then. So the role is, first of all, it's not necessarily a structure within Claude projects. It's literally the opening line that you put in, and that sets the context for the conversation. And so on every request, it presumably uses, I think it uses everything in that chat as context. So it automatically continues with that role. The specification, did you ask for, is that like a YAML specification, right?
Yes.
Did you ask specifically for a YAML specification, or is that?
Yeah, I asked for OpenAPI specification,
okay,
which
so
is a standard.
Yeah.
A standard that any framework can talk to. Also, something we talked about auditors. So look at this. Please contrast the specification with setup.SQL SQL script and make sure they are compatible and using the same names. If not, please modify. So these type of things are quite useful.
And was this the same? This is a different role though, right?
No, this is
the same role, but you're turning it into more of an auditor role now.
And then it realizes it makes some mistakes. It modifies some things. I don't know what it modified, but it modifies some stuff, and that's it.
Curious. You don't know what it modified. So
no, I do know. I'm not right now. But
I see.
Yeah, but eventually I do know.
So my question there was going to be how much you look into, like from an assistant point of view versus a more automated path. How much are you looking at every single thing it creates versus throwing it all together and seeing what happens at the end?
In this case, we all use Git as software developers, and I think it's instrumental to use Git for this. So what I would do is I will just add this file to VS Code. Once I add it, I will stage the file. I don't have to commit it. I just stage the file, and then I copy paste the modifications and I can see the diff.
Nice.
And then that's how I survey how things are being modified.
Gotcha.
But I have to review and audit everything except for the front end part where I mean I do review it, but just because I'm curious.
And sometimes probably it's definitely good to do that validation and verification afterwards anyway. But sometimes I'm guessing Claude will probably tell you the changes it made as well. But it's not, you can't just rely on its description. It's good to validate. So I think it makes sense what you're doing.
I don't think we're there yet. I think we still have to survey that. Let's go into the failed backend path. You asked me that question during
so what makes a failed path, first of all?
What makes a failed path? As I said in the previous podcast, I'm the one who made the mistake. It was the first implementation of the backend, and I realized that I didn't do things in the right order. Because I saw that the API is the glue point between the front end and the backend, so I thought I have to start by the API. And it's not true. I had to start by the OpenAPI definition. That's what I had to start with. The OpenAPI definition, not the implementation. And then once you have the definition, then you start by data model, the services layer, and then you have data model or services layer. You have enough context to actually create the API straight. So that's what I realized. And actually, I realized yes and no. I just felt that I took a path where I asked straight away, implement the API, and it was getting messy. It needed to do a lot of modifications. I do know about backend development, so I knew this is not the right path. So I simply say, provide a summary of what we did, suggest an approach for future implementations, mermaid diagram, and it gave me this diagram, which I didn't like that much. So I asked it, please make it simple. And at the end, this is the conclusion. So with a discussion that I had with these roles saying these things are not working out, please summarize what we did wrong, what didn't work. And at the end, this is what it suggests. Start with the detailed specification review, data model design, service layer implementation, API schema definition, and API endpoint implementation. So my error was going straight to this without doing these two first. So there's a lot of hallucinations going on of how these.
Yeah, because it always wants to give an answer, right? Whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end, that's what I did for the next backend implementation, and it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
I focused first on the service layer, API schema definition, and bam, done.
So what does it look like then in your kind of like Git flow when you hit a dead end? What does it look like in terms of the Git flow? But also then, how do you take your learnings into the next?
Sure, that's a good question. So I just did a branch for the backend,
Okay.
and then I just put a tag that it was a dead end.
Yeah.
And then I just continue with my other branch. That's it.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
So it looks familiar, and from a Git point of view.
Yeah, it's not nothing fancy, very simple.
Yeah.
Just a branch that didn't go further. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did with that, what I did was learn, basically. Like that's all. It was a learning path. And now I know a better way of doing it. I just threw away all of the code. All of the code that I did with that was thrown away. I didn't look back. And I simply used that as a learning path. And the thing is that it's so cheap that it doesn't matter. Like it's like at the first backend failed path, I was like, oh, damn it. It's painful. But then I thought, I've only been doing this for 30 minutes, 1 hour. Who cares?
Yeah.
Let's just throw it away and start again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty. When you realize that, when you go past that fear of starting over that we have as developers, because it's a lot of work, it just doesn't matter. What did I learn in this path? And let's just try another one.
And I think that's curious. It's the learning piece, right? What have you learned from it? And how can you take that back into the next one to make it easier or faster? And I think you do ask for handover, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The handover, which I then include here, the suggested implementation path and key learnings, areas of improvement, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's worth it to go through the details, but suggested approach for future implementation. So that was the setup I had for Cards Against AI, and I think it gives a good overview. I think moving forward, you can achieve something similar with Cursor. I think I will still use Claude for React mockups and for products, natural language product specifications. I think it's quite good for that.
So show us the React mockup, because I think that's super interesting. We did a blog, our designer actually, Rachel, did a blog about how she did some of this with some front end design stuff that she was looking at. She actually updated her website afterwards. Yeah, let's see what it looks like here.
Okay, you're a senior front end developer, blah blah blah. You have a key 9 for detail, blah blah blah, and then important thing, go through front end specification and the OpenAPI YAML file. This will give you an overall idea of what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Help me design the front ends. Give me some React visuals first. This is important because if you don't say that, it will implement the whole thing. And I don't want it to implement the whole thing. I first want to nail down the design. And once I have the design the proper design.
Just breaking it down effectively, and then almost giving your approvals for the various bits, which are then later implemented. Yeah.
So this is the home page. This is the game page. I didn't let's spare the details. No need to go into that. But then I had some things that I had to change. Please do this, do that. And it started to change. Complete game page. And as you can see, like you have an evolution here of the whole app. Add a 13 column, add the score and submit button to the top, blah, blah, blah. I just tell it what I want. And then let's go to the part where we actually implement it, which I think it's quite nice. So at the end, this is what we get. And then if it's functional, this is actually quite powerful. It's functional.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
How much did you have to actually change under the covers to get it to work?
Not that much. Look at this. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 prompts.
Were there any issues with the code, rather?
I don't know. Okay. And I don't care, because at this point I only look at the visuals.
It's just the not the back end. This is just the visuals, just the front end.
Yeah. So in 6 prompts, I got the visuals for the home page and the complete game page.
Yeah.
And then what I did is I did this prompt, and I think this prompt I also put it here because I think it was quite important. It's also part of the specification, which is the contract, let's say. Which is basically here I'm just saying, hey, the front end will interact with the back end following specifications found on OpenAPI final. Please be careful to understand how to integrate it and what data to expect from each API call.
Yeah.
And then I said the homepage component is going to interact in this way and the game page in this way. So I'm just saying which endpoints are you going to call in which different situations.
Yeah.
And then once I do that, it goes for the implementation. And yeah, I think I said, is this clear enough? Do you think there are some missing points? This is really important to always end when in some key points, always ask for clarification. Ask me clarifying questions. It's quite useful.
Yeah.
And then you just do whatever. We will not implement it. You just at endpoints. How do you suggest we proceed with implementation? And then you get the whole code. And then it's just a matter of, okay, suggest a folder structure for scaffolding the whole project. And there you have it.
And this looks like a real pain to have to move all this across now to VS Code, right? Or something
yeah,
like that.
For sure. But that's why I always ask for scaffolding. I always ask for scaffold frontend.
Yeah.
At least it creates the folder structures and the file names.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the rest is history.
That's I like that idea. That's a good idea.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then I got an error, and then it just modifies the error.
So it automatically feeds that back in, or you ask it to?
No, I put the error in.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, I see. That's yours.
Yeah, I put it in, and then it modifies stuff. I run it. I also got some errors.
It's very apologetic, isn't it? I apologize for that error. How dare I suggest code that doesn't work? Yeah.
When I hit start game in the home page, the page turns blank and does not bring me the game page. And then, and at the end, please show me the full content, blah, blah, blah. And then, this one, please show me the full content of the game page. That's actually not a nice thing that you have in Claude, which is it shows you what to modify. And sometimes
it doesn't actually provide you with the full version.
Give me the full one. And then you've got this thing that doesn't work because it's trying to do a rendering, but I don't care about the rendering. I just want the code.
Yeah.
So I just copy paste the code. Anyway, and then at the end you got it. I think I came to the end of this part. But I think this is the gist of it.
So if someone wants to build an app from scratch, how would they start?
Sure. So I had this app we built at Predictia for chatting with your database. Okay, so I just use this as an example because I already have a ready-made backend that is working.
Yeah.
So let's try to do the front end of this. I already have a front end, but let's try to do another one just for the exercise.
Yeah.
So
we should all chat with our databases regularly anyway, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Get to know them. And
I think it's important.
Yeah.
It's the human thing to do.
Yeah, because you shouldn't only talk to them when you need something. It's just generally, how are you doing, database?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're a senior front-end developer with extensive experience building React apps. It's quite similar to the other one. It's not very different. At the end, this is just a matter of taste.
So that's set now for the every discussion that we have in here.
And I actually started a project here where I have my front-end description, how I want the outline to be. I have my OpenAPI schema definition.
So how much of this did you create versus ask Claude to create for you?
Yeah. So this one, I got it from the backend.
Okay.
So,
of course.
Yeah, this is just the OpenAPI specification from the backend.
And this is super useful just so that when you do create other pieces, it connects nicely.
Because
that's the last place you want anything to hallucinate or expect things to be there when they're not.
It's that's the beauty of standards.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's an open standard. Everybody respects it. And that's the beauty. This one, I wrote it on my own. I just wrote it. I don't think I need Claude to write this because it's quite simple.
Okay.
And then I just put all of those files over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I already did one, but let's start one from scratch. Okay. So let's just copy paste the prompt just to save us some time. Yeah. Please help me design the front end according to frontend.md. Do not implement all of the code yet. Give me some React mockups. Let's say mockups.
So it knows what frontend MD is because it's a file in the project knowledge.
So let's see how it does. Okay, this is a common error I've been getting this morning that I was not getting before. It's not an error really. This is proper code.
Yeah.
Which is you are importing things from component UI button components, and this does not allow us to render these. Okay.
Because it's not something that we are supplying.
Yeah.
It's a best practice probably for people who are developing code, but they would then import that into their environment.
So let's say, please include all components in the same file and add mockup data. because I saw that it said that I need to implement an API, whatever. Now forget about that. I just want to see the visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's mockup response. It's good.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And the button, just putting it all in line.
Yeah.
So would this be, if you did want to actually just import stuff, this would be quite annoying as well, right? Because if we did pull this out to VS Code, we wouldn't want to necessarily inline this all the time.
Yeah.
So we would presumably maybe want to make some changes before we export, just to say, okay, let's assume we do these imports now, and so we can almost get it right and then perform the imports afterwards, perhaps.
Yeah.
But this looks much nicer.
Yeah. And I'm not seeing the rest. Let's do a test. Submit. We're not seeing the rest. So I am not seeing the other cards, only the input component. So as you can imagine, I did learn a bit about React with all of this hacking.
I apologize.
Yeah,
It's very,
shame on you.
very kind, isn't it? It looks a bit bigger.
Yeah. React DOM. Oof.
So it's interesting. It
Yeah, it uses an external library.
yeah.
Yeah. Do not use React DOM. But so there's always the fight that you have here. Sometimes it's just better to stop if you already know what. Oh, what is happening, Claude? Did I break Claude? Keep everything in the same file.
Now this is an interesting tip here, because you chose to edit that versus writing a new. So what's the value of the edit versus adding a later prompt to
noise reduction?
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, as simple as that. Noise reduction. Because if it made a mistake, but it didn't make a mistake, it's just separating into two different component files, which makes it, you cannot render that here. Okay.
Yep.
So because you cannot render, I cannot see it, I cannot validate it. So that's why I'm asking it to keep on the same file. So it's better to do it this way so that you reduce the noise and you have a cleaner context, because otherwise you will have a version with two separate files and another version with just everything in one file. So that's not ideal. Yeah, so he's still not interacting with, he's not giving us the full page. I am still not seeing all components.
And maybe because of the non-determinism here as well, it's interesting because maybe had that command had run, or had that prompt run 4 or 5 times, a number of them would have worked, a number of them wouldn't. So it's like almost how down to your luck as well as to whether it will do it or not, because you don't know which path it will take.
There you have it.
This looks a bit better.
There you have it. Now we have the front end. Maybe it's not as beautiful as I would want to, but it doesn't matter. Like we could care about that. We could iterate and say, for example, I want thought process and explanation to be in the same row. I want approve and disapprove to be next to submit button. We could try all of this stuff, but maybe let's go to the more interesting part, which is, okay, now let's go and implement this. Okay. So for that implementation, this is where I have the OpenAPI contract.
Yes.
Okay. So this frontend will interact with backend following the specifications found on file openapi.yaml. Please read carefully to understand, blah, blah, blah. And then I simply say what happens. We only have 2 endpoints, I think, ask and feedback.
Yeah.
So ask that you submit a query, and then you get back like the thought process, the explanation, the results on the query. Then approve or disapprove, because I want to have a feedback. Did I give
thumbs up, thumbs down,
the right response or not? Yeah, exactly. So now I just have to tell it, like, please implement this front end. I'm going to cheat, if you don't mind, to make it quicker. Just to make it quicker. Okay, so this is the prompt. So read Frontend API contract, what we just saw.
And you wrote that, or
I wrote this,
yeah.
For instructions on how to interact with your backend. Proceed with the implementation and provide all necessary files and folder structures to execute this app. Provide a bash script for scaffolding the skeleton of the project. Provide full file context and not just the editable parts. And provide instructions on how to set up and run the front end.
This is in the same chat.
Yeah.
As the front end.
It has to be in the same chat
because it needs that as context.
It
Unless you pull that out to another file and use that as context.
Yeah. Which I should actually. I think that this, I do think that this is what is happening here. Okay, this thing is running and it's
we're confusing
let it flow. Let it flow. But that's a mockup, and this mockup, it's part of the product specification. In the way I used it, it's part of the product specification. Why not?
And so if we're going back to the Git flow, where would you, at what stages typically, based on your experience using this as a workflow, at what places so far would you have copied the code across, or even specifications and so forth across to actually perform or stage it or commit at various points?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, okay. Is now a good point then, or would you have done it before? Now's a good point.
Now it's a good point to stage, not to commit.
To stage,
to stage, because now you stage. Let's just do it. So
maybe let's just do one file.
That sh. So in this case, this will be the flow. First, git init first. Okay, git init. And then I would just say
you just do your git add straight from there.
First, I should have done git add specifications. Yeah, exactly. And git commit. Initial specifications. This is not the best commit, but it doesn't matter. And then git add scaffold, and I will stop there.
So why would you stop there and not?
Because I'm not sure if this thing working or not.
Okay.
And if I say you made this mistake, blah blah blah, whatever, change this and that. If that's the
you don't
case,
want to commit for every single one of those.
Exactly. So I keep iterating until I say, okay, now I got to a milestone where what Claude provided me works. Then I have a commit.
And for this, how do you add tests? Do you get Claude to create them for you? Do you do it? Is it more visual based on your?
For a front end, I have no idea how to test the front. How do I test for a front end? I have no idea. So again, like I'm a backend developer, so in that case, I would just ask Claude. To
generate some tests or click through yourself. But I guess with the backend,
I do the test myself too. The visual, like the users test, of course, I do them. But if you really want to have hard-coded tests, in that case, I would just ask Claude to help me write the tests.
And I guess from a backend point of view as well, you can get it to start generating those, or use some other AI tools if you're pulling that across into your IDE, Codium, or whatever it is to do that. Okay, cool.
So this is the workflow. Now the next step will be to just copy paste everything and run the instructions as they said and see how that goes. I do think that this is a nice way of doing. Oh, this is supposed to be called setup.sh apparently. It doesn't matter. I do think that this is nice and everything. As I said at the beginning, I wanted to test the raw power of Claude. I would do it differently. I would do it this way. Let's forget about this. And then Composer. So this is how I would do it, which is like the equivalent. you know.
Mhm.
Actually, that's not how I would do it precisely, but I would have to first take this code, copy it, and then app mockup that dsx, I think was the extension. Yeah. No.
And so this, when it does create, it will automatically populate it in the because there's obviously an IDE as well as an AI enabled assistant. So as it generates, it automatically puts it in a file structure, right?
Yeah, exactly. But again, I haven't tried Cursor as much as I would like to. I've been off for 1 month of holidays.
But this would be your next step.
Yeah,
to try it,
that would be my next step. I don't know how good this will work. I would say this has to be quite powerful, but the idea is doing the same, but here, and then you hit submit.
And what does this use under the covers? Is there a
Claude
specific
3.5?
This uses Claude 3.5 as well. Yeah, and this presumably would also be better in terms of if you are trying to import things, you can then start pulling those components in versus requiring it, because you're not effectively running it in a REPL whereby you need those. You can actually just run it using those components.
So accept all.
Yeah.
And then as you can see, like I have everything here.
Yeah.
And now it's okay if it separates things into different files. That's the right way of doing it.
Yes.
So that will be for me the next step. I don't know if you want to give it a try to see if this runs, or maybe you can see the other one.
Let's try it.
Let's try it.
Let's try it. Why not?
Okay. Let's see. So let's follow the instructions here. So bash scaffold. Okay. Complete. But like it hallucinated a bit here. Like at the end, it did some stuff that are quite weird. Just repeated it as if this was actually not necessary. Like this scaffolding, actually, and maybe I did a mistake here in that, because now we're talking about Cursor. Yeah, that's my mistake. As we were saying, like sometimes when it doesn't give you what you need, maybe you're the one who made a mistake.
Yeah.
you confused it, because make sure you scaffold the whole project and add necessary configuration files. Yeah. So I don't need to say that because we're in Cursor at the moment.
Yeah.
Cursor already has the instruction to scaffold everything.
Yeah. So it's just duplicated that scaffold essentially.
Yeah. So let's leave this package here. No, you know what? Let's do it again. Doesn't matter. Okay. Let's do it again. No, that's not that one, but how to integrate your backend, proceed with implementation and provide. That's obvious because we're in Cursor. We don't need this. Provide a full file content and not just the editable parts. Again, this is not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, those two.
Okay, and actually, implement the front end based on the mockup found at follow Frontend API and OpenAPI for instructions on how to communicate with the backend. Then we just don't need to put this here. And then simply provide instructions.
Feels faster.
Yeah.
I don't know why. So maybe
Yeah.
it's the UI.
Yeah. So accept all. So you say accept all and everything is there.
Yeah.
And let's just do npm install. Okay. CD analytics frontend. Something is missing there. So it didn't provide a
Package JSON.
yeah. So you forgot.
Looks good.
Yeah.
Thinking.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
What else should I do? So npm install. I should provide the backend API. So let's create a .env. Yeah, and that's actually the address. Let's just verify. Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Source. .env. Okay, what else should we do? And then run dev. This works straight out. Huh.
I would have been amazed.
Yeah. Huh. It's quite weird. But wait, do we have a conflict? Okay. And then go to, it's funny. Okay, let me just check because I think that I do have a stuff running on the port. Just make sure that, okay, no, this is not the case. But here, this is the case. Make down. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. When I go to the URL, I get this.
And this is the problem then. It's giving it quite generic error responses.
And also this is where the fact that I'm not a front-end developer and that I'm not proficient in Node.js, that's where I start losing because
it's good till it's not when it's generating stuff, but unless you actually know the details and depth of it. So we have a Python developer and a Java developer trying to debug JavaScript right now, which is
exactly
which is not a good space.
We need to check if there's an issue with the main entry point. Let's create our update analytics. Also make sure you have an index. Okay, it created 2 new files. So this is where, let's pause here. So this is where I should have done that, but I didn't anyway. Dropbox projects, chat UTV. This is where I should have started using Git. To actually see what is changing.
Oh, I see. To compare better diff the updates there. And also it's like offering things now that we didn't specifically ask for. So it's almost like we were almost being too specific and it wasn't generating enough for the app.
Git ignore node modules. Okay, now this is something useful. Stage all. Stage all except this one. Okay, and then let's go back to the composer and let's accept this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I see that it actually changed some stuff.
Yeah.
Like the index.html
index.html.
didn't have anything.
Yeah.
And we were missing the main.txx. So this is a great example of the importance of using Git as your buddy here.
Yeah.
So let's see if that changes the output of these. There you have it.
Amazing. Yeah.
Let's give me a list of brands. There you have it.
There we go. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. That was super cool. Super.
Yeah.
It was awesome to see that demo more end to end, and I think hopefully folks on YouTube will have seen some very interesting things, how to get started, and also showing how easy it is for two backend developers ultimately.
Sure.
To
Python and Java doing Node.js.
There we go. Who'd have thought to build up a front end and connect to that back end. So using the specs in particular as big pieces to connect different parts of the app. Felipe, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for sharing some live coding using Cursor, using Claude products.
Thank you, Simon, for having me. It's been wonderful 2 days interacting with you and looking what you were doing. It's really great conversations and everything. I'm really happy to be here.
Amazing. Appreciate it. And tune into the next episode. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time on the AI Native Dev, brought to you by Tesla.